Hello everyone and welcome once again to Ruby's Classic Cooking. And tonight I just want to take a second to say welcome to all of my Australian viewers. I didn't realize I had a following in Australia till I was looking at my stats today. And I have a lot of viewers from the United States. Welcome to you too. I'm always glad to see people viewing my videos and I hope learning and taking advantage of some of these older recipes. Anyway, tonight I'm making a recipe that isn't actually old at all. It's a new one. It's from Pampered Chef, and it is a no-knead bread. So this is the most simple, easiest kind of bread I've ever made. And all you need is a large mixing bowl and your basic wooden spoon and this. Now, I'm filming it tonight because the big trick about this recipe is you have to let this dough rise at room temperature for 6 to 10 hours. So you put this stuff on at night before you go to bed, get up tomorrow and make the bread, finish the bread off. So it's kind of a sourdough bread, I guess, because of the long, slow rise, but there's no starter involved or anything like that. You just mix this up just like you were making a cake, cover it with some plastic wrap, and leave it overnight on top of your stove or someplace where it's not going to get disturbed for 6 to 10 hours. And as long as you're going to be around tomorrow to finish this off and get it panned and cooked, you're done. It's really easy to do. Anyway, I'll get started. Roll up my sleeves a little bit here. In my bowl I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour in Canada, and that's strong flour in the UK or bread flour in the USA. I'm not sure what the Australians, what kind of flour you guys have down there for making bread, but whatever kind of flour you use for making bread. Now don't worry, the metric equivalents will be in my description file down below as always. So I start off with 3 cups of flour, and to that I am going to add, now you can add, this is a flavored bread, so tonight I'm adding a rub to my bread. This happens to be a Pampered Chef rub. It's bell pepper. And you add 1 to 2 tablespoons. That's 15 to 30 milliliters of a rub. Now, add your favorite rub. If you want to make garlic bread, add some dried minced garlic. If you want to make a spicy bread, then add some jalapeno peppers or some dried red pepper flakes or something of that nature. You can add onion. You can add, I like a mild bread, that's why I'm using the bell pepper rub. You can use you can put dill. You can put all kinds of different flavors in here. I've even made this bread without putting anything in it at all. So it's a little clumpy there. There we go. 2 tablespoons of my rub here. And I'm also going to add to here 1 teaspoon of yeast. And this is just your regular bread making yeast. And I always like to add a little extra, just in case it needs a little help. Yeast is a plant, and me and plants sometimes don't get along, but that's okay. That's just me. And then what comes next here? Then a teaspoon of salt. Just plain old ordinary salt is all I ever use. You can use kosher salt or Himalayan rock salt or whatever you want to use, but I find that just plain old regular salt works for me. Has for years. And let's see now. Now I'm going to add 1.5 cups, which is 12 ounces or 300 milliliters of lukewarm water. Now lukewarm just means if you stick your finger in it and you put it on the back of your hand, it feels like it's at body temperature. Because when you're dealing with yeast, yeast is a plant. You don't want this water to be too hot because you don't want to bake your yeast, you don't want to cook your yeast to kill it. And you don't want it to be too cold because if it's too cold, it's not going to get your yeast going and growing. It needs the right environment. So I'm just going to pour this in on top of here. And then I add 2 tablespoons of oil. And I've got my canola oil or olive oil. So I've got my canola oil here, and I'll put that in here tonight. 1, 2. There you go. And I'm just going to stir this up like I was stirring up a cake mix. Just make sure you get all your ingredients stirred together. And now, when I've got that done, see, I'm just kind of stirring this all together here. Make sure there's no loose flour left. You can make this, like if you want to make a garlic bread, when you're finished you'll have what looks like artisan bread. And you can make this cake, you can make this bread, this cake, you can make this bread two ways. You can either make it into 2 small round loaves, or you can make it into 1 big loaf, which it serves 16 people. And so you can have a nice round loaf that looks like an artisan loaf, which you can use to make a party sandwich loaf. Or you can have another loaf which you can use to cut pieces off. And if you want to make this bread so that you can serve it with your latest olive oil with balsamic vinegar as a dip, or some of the other flavored dips that are popular right now, well, this is perfect for that. And you can even season your bread to complement the kind of rub or dip you're going to be using with your balsamic vinegar and olive oil tomorrow, you know, or whenever you're serving it. You can make it party sandwich that will serve 8 people. 2 loaves, that would be 16 people. So if you have a party coming up with the kids and they're having a bunch of friends over, you can just make up a batch of this bread and just slice it like these. I'll show you all that tomorrow when I have the bread. I'm really getting ahead of myself here. Anyway, I'm just going to mix this up. I'm doing this the night before, that's why it's so dark. And tomorrow morning when I get up, I'll finish this bread up. Now see, it's kind of a sticky looking dough, but I've gathered up all of my flour in there, and it's all combined. That's how long it took me. Very quick, very easy. And now, all I have to do is scrape off the spoon a little bit. Put my plastic wrap over the top. Put it someplace, and 6 to 10 hours from now, I'll be back to finish making this bread. So, good night for now. We'll see you tomorrow. Hi everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of No Knead Bread. Now, the next morning, it's been 9.5 hours out of my 10 hours, so I've got to get my bread done up before it over-rises. Anyway, here's what it looks like today, as contrasted with what it looked like last night when I put it on. When I just put the Saran wrap on it and put it on the stove, just on the back of my stove, to stay at room temperature overnight. So, now the next phase is take some all-purpose flour, sprinkle it on your board, and then you want to take this out of here because this is kind of sticky, and I need to work a little bit more flour in here. All those little dots in here, that's my rub. That is now hydrated, my dehydrated rub. So it smells very, very nice, and if this was garlic, it would smell very garlicky, and if it was jalapeno peppers, it would smell like jalapenos. If it was like, you know, dried red flakes, if it was dried red pepper flakes, that's what it would smell like. If it was lavender or whatever else you want to put on it, that's what it would be smelling like this morning. Now, I'm not going to knead this, but I'm just going to fold this over a few times, just a few times, just to kind of mash but what you want to do is break up those big bubbles. Let me just knock that camera down just a bit so you can see me, what I'm doing here. I'm just going to knead it lightly a couple or 3 times. Not really anything serious here. I'm just going to work in a bit more flour so it's not so sticky, as it is quite sticky. And now, you can either put this in one large 12 cup or 3 liter pan, or I'm going to divide it into 2 6 cup 1.5 liter pans so that I can have 2 nice round loaves of bread. So that's it. That's all I'm doing to my bread right there. That's it. The dough is ready to be panned. And here's one of my casseroles. Now, what you need to do this Here's my other one. They don't match, but that's okay. What you need for this is, if you're going to do it this way, 2 casseroles, round preferred, and 6-cup capacity with a lid. You need the lid on it. So you can improvise foil, I suppose, but if you're going to do this very often, you could use a cornware casserole or Pyrex casserole or any kind of casserole dish that you've got that's the right size. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in here and brush that around, because that's what it says to do in my recipe. And you can either end up with 1 large loaf that will serve 16 people, or 2 smaller loaves that'll do 8. So I'm doing this way because this is also an excellent way to make another recipe, which is called a party sandwich, which I'll show you after I've got the bread made. So I was getting a bit ahead of myself there. Let me move this camera back up. There we go. Okay. I'm my own cameraman, in case you haven't figured that one out, so that's why my camera angles don't change. And I'm just gonna use my pastry brush. You could also use a piece of torn off paper towel if you wanted to do this. Anyway. And I am going to now just cut this in half. Well, I'm not going to cut it in half. I'm just going to tear it in half. Eyeballing it all the way. There we go. Oh, that lump's a little bit bigger. Yeah, just work this back in here. Bread is very forgiving about things like this. And I'm just breaking down some of those big bubbles that have formed overnight. Okay, now this is just going to go right into my pan. Oh, now I'm going to put my camera down again so I can show you this. I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to put it in my pan just like that. Okay? You see there's tons of room around here, right? And now what I'm going to do next is, put the camera up again, after I wash my hands off, that is, I'm going to be going to my sink. I'm going to be getting 2 cups of water in a microwave safe pitcher or bowl or whatever. I'm going to microwave that water for 3 to 5 minutes till it's nice and boiling. And if you don't have a microwave, you can always just boil it in a pan on a stove. Well, you need about 2 cups of water, which is about 500 milliliters of water, to do this. Because what you're going to be doing now is you're going to be putting this into a cold oven. Put your bread dough into a cold oven with the container that has the boiling water in it to one side, so it kind of steams and heats your bread, and then you're going to let it rise for 1 hour. And then, after it's risen for an hour, I'll bring it back and show you what I've got, because then it'll be time to bake it. I've got my 2 cups, my 500 milliliters of boiling water, and I'm now going to put this in my oven, and then I'm going to put my 2 lumps of bread dough here with it. I'm putting these in the oven, and they're going to be uncovered as they're rising, okay? Hi, and here I am back again. It's been an hour, and this bread has been rising in the oven with the cold oven with the container of hot water, boiling hot water. And see how my bread dough has changed. I have to be very careful. I don't want to deflate these loaves now that they've risen. And now I'm going to preheat my oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 230 degrees Celsius. And I'm going to bake them for, let me see, let me just check my recipe card. Place these loaves in the oven, covered, which is why you need your covers. Be very careful taking them out of the oven that you don't deflate your bread, and be careful putting them in the oven because you don't want to deflate your bread. Now after 30 minutes of baking, I'm going to take these lids off and then cook it for another 10 to 15 minutes until it's nice and golden brown. And then you take it out and you put it on your cooling racks and you leave it to cool for half an hour before you cut it. And then you can enjoy some delicious artisan bread. And it's a kind of a sourdough bread, but you don't need any starter for it. So I hope you'll try this recipe. That's what it looks like after the 30 minutes covered in the oven. And by the way, I did take that thing of water out. These are not cooked with the water. So 30 minutes in the oven, and that's what it looks like. And another 10-15 minutes, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all finished and golden brown. And here it is, 12 minutes later, and look at this golden brown, beautiful loaf. I'm just going to turn that out on here and go back and get the other one. Yeah, see how beautiful that is? All golden brown on the bottom as well as the top. That nice mounded shape, like an artisan loaf of bread that you'd pay in my neighborhood, $8 or $10 for a loaf of bread like that, and that one cost me pennies to make. Let's see while I get the other one. Here's the second one. It's stuck a little bit on the bottom, so I'll just turn this one out. That could stick a bit. Look how nice and golden brown this one is too. It's not quite as round as the other one, but that's okay. That's the artisan bread look, right? Which would also cost you $8 or $10 in my neighborhood. And now, just leave your loaf sitting on your cooling rack for 20 minutes before you do anything else to it, okay? For 20 minutes. You can use these loaves in a number of different ways. You could cut this out around the top and hollow it out and leave like an inch, 2.5 centimeters around the edge and at the bottom to use it as a bread bowl for a dip for a party. You fill this up with your hot dip. You cube up all the bread you've taken out into nice bite-sized pieces. Your guests have a cube of bread that they can dip into your dip. Also, you can take it and you can cut it right through here if you're having a party, and you can prepare sandwich filling. Like I have a recipe here that's for a hot chicken. You take a pound of skinless, boneless chicken breast, cut up into thin strips. You fry them off with some red onion and a small red pepper, and mix it up with some. You mix some mayonnaise with some of your favorite rub, like if you want to use dried onion or garlic, or this one's dill. This particular recipe calls for your bell pepper rub, and then you spread the mayonnaise mixture on your cut bread, and you fry up your chicken and onions and so on for the filling, and then you just cut this loaf into 8 pieces, and you've got 8 party sandwiches for your guests, and they're nice and hot and juicy. Even if you wanted to make Philly beef sandwiches and use this kind of bread for that, you could do that too. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me on Ruby's Classic Cooking today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope that you will like, subscribe, and comment below, and try this recipe. So which I'll be putting in the description file below. And I'm looking forward to hoping that you'll be back to watch me next time on Ruby's Classic Cooking. Bye for now.